The first thing she did was step over my boundary chain and try to blow out the flames with a folded HOA newsletter as if paper air could smother oak and mesquite. The second thing she did was scream that we were all going to prison. Her voice hit the clearing like sirens, bowling through the trees and scattering the owls. Behind her, two smaller shadows clanged the chain with a foolish sort of courage and followed close, carrying cell phones like badges. The newsletter snapped back and forth in her hand, flapping like a wounded bird above our campfire, and the ash that lifted looked silver in the moonlight. My daughter, Emma, tucked in under my arm, whispered, "Dad, who is she?" The heavy-set woman squared herself as if to occupy more oxygen than the rest of us, chin pinned forward, eyes glittering with the kind of certainty only a person absolutely wrong can feel. "That fire violates Section 12, Article C of Timber Ridge Community Standards," she announced, pronouncing each capital letter like a gavel strike. "I am the board president and you are done." I stood from my camp chair without hurry, my boots grinding pine needles, and pointed without drama to the wooden sign I'd burned by hand and set on the stump earlier that day. Private land, legal campfire. It felt a little like one of those slow clap moments movies love. I didn't clap. I just let her see the words. Her eyes slid past it as if words were only useful when she wielded them. She turned to the two followers, conscience on her left, ambition on her right, neither older than my nephew, and puffed herself taller. "Call it in. Call the sheriff. Tell them there's an illegal burn, children endangered, possible arson." She smiled, and in that small, awful smile I heard the lawsuit she'd already drafted in her mind. The HOA fines she'd stack like firewood. The victory speech she'd rehearse in a mirror. "I should tell you about the fire." It was small, a circle of brick sunk into a ring of crushed gravel I'd leveled myself. There were 2 5-gallon water cans, one on each side of the pit, a shovel, a spark arrestor grate, and the smell of wet earth because I'd hosed the duff earlier, like any sane person who loves a forest loves it with a little effort. No wind, no burn ban, and the county's evening index sat green as a go light. My mother's cast iron skillet was cooling on the edge with the last of the peaches sticking in sugar crust, and my son Eli had marshmallow on his chin like a proud beard. In other words, it was a scene that shouldn't scare anyone. It scared her because she didn't control it. She shoved closer. "This is open space owned collectively by Timber Ridge," she declared, "and if you refuse to comply, I will seek injunctive relief, damages, and immediate removal of all illegal improvements." She said improvements like a cough. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice so even it sounded like it belonged to someone wiser than me, "you crossed my chain. You're standing on my easement. Behind you is my southern boundary, marked with fluorescent stakes installed by the county surveyor last winter. This parcel has never been annexed into Timber Ridge and never will be. You are trespassing, and you're frightening my kids." She smiled the way people smile before they push the gas over a puddle to splash your shoes. "I've read the bylaws," she said. "I wrote the last update." Her followers nodded as if an oath had just been sworn. I lifted my phone, opened the county parcel map app, and let the satellite image spin into focus. There it was, a little green rectangle, naked of any HOA overlay, renter of no one's rules but the fire code and my conscience. I showed her. She didn't look. People like her never look where truth sits because they're busy rearranging the furniture in their own courtroom. The first red and blue flicker arrived along the timber road at the same time my wife, Maya, put her hand on my shoulder. She'd gone to calm the kids. Now she stood beside me with that stillness she learned during her years on an ambulance, still as a field medic who has already done the math and knows what happens if panic gets paid. The heavy-set woman, her name was Deborah, but she rebranded herself as Madam President. In every email lifted her voice to greet the cruiser like it was her personal ride. "Officer, over here. Illegal fire. Open flame. Children endangered. Non-compliant landowner." She made the words dance for her, like she loved the weight of them far more than the truth underneath. The deputy stepped out and took in the scene. One ringed pit, water cans, a shovel, a cooling grate, 2 kids blinking tears not from smoke but from confusion, and a woman quivering with righteous fury. His name tag read Delgado, and his eyebrows had the kind of kindness that makes you believe rules were made to protect, not to punish. "Evening, folks," he said. "I got a call." The caller used language suggesting a wildfire. My wife lifted a small, battered clipboard that has followed our marriage from apartment to house to here. It held a printout of the county's recreational fire standards, today's index, and a copy of the email the county wildfire marshal sent me after reviewing our setup. "We aren't perfect people," I told him, "but we are boringly compliant." Delgado chuckled despite himself. Madam President didn't. She thrust a phone at him, screen blazing a bylaw document with more highlights than a teenage Bible. "This is community space," she declared. He turned, scanned the chain and the posts and the puncheon bridge where I'd stenciled my parcel number. "Ma'am," he said, "according to what I'm seeing, and what he's showing, this isn't Timber Ridge property." She laughed too loudly, like it would frighten facts back into their cage. "We will sue," she promised. "You'll lose your shirt, your land, your little fire pit." She said little like a slur. "I've seen conflagrations. I spent 6 summers on a hotshot crew, sleeping in blackened dirt and eating breakfast standing up while sun rose through smoke. What flared here wasn't fire. It was control." Deborah stepped closer to the pit and kicked a brick with her heel. The grate clinked. Ash lifted. Delgado's voice changed an octave without rising in volume. "Ma'am, step back from the fire." She didn't step back. She reached into a big leather tote and, with the theatrical flair of a magician, brought out a plastic grocery sack that crinkled and gleamed. Lighter fluid, the cheap kind. For a heartbeat, the entire clearing held its breath. She wagged it at me like a pact with chaos. "If you don't put it out, I'll show you how fast things go wrong," she hissed. The air itself tensed. Even the pines seemed to listen hard. That's when another set of lights dusted the roadway with white and amber, and the county wildfire marshal's pickup rolled in, paint dull with dust and sun. It had not been Madam President's plan to summon him. It had been mine, hours earlier, when I texted him a photo of our setup because I knew the email she'd lobbed around the neighborhood last week, accusing us of reckless burning, wasn't going to die a quiet death. Rafael Cortez is broad-shouldered and slow-moving, the kind of calm men wear like a heavy coat. He was my father's friend, back when my dad's knees still handled ladder trucks, and he was the one who shook my hand when I brought my hotshot helmet home for the last time. He climbed out and took off his hat and breathed in once. Sharp. "You smell that?" he asked Delgado. "That's wet soil. Not danger." He nodded to me, then to Maya. "Good setup." He walked the ring, crouched to test the earth with the back of his hand, tapped the grate with the knuckle of a finger like a tuning fork. Then he turned to Deborah, still holding the lighter fluid like a bomb. "Ma'am, if you open that near open flame, I will cite you for reckless endangerment and attempted arson." Her mouth opened. No leadership came out. The clearing filled with the kind of silence that only happens when someone's story collapses under its own weight. Behind Deborah, her 2 acolytes filmed, the camera shakes giving away their unease. Cortez lifted a small tablet and pulled up the same parcel map app I'd flashed. He traced the old survey lines like a priest showing a pilgrim how the river actually runs. He explained the conservation easement that clips the back corner of my land and the utility easement that parallels the timber road. He didn't do it to show her up. He did it the way a teacher might, if the student had any intention of learning. Meanwhile, Delgado took the lighter fluid gently, placed it on the gravel, and nudged it away with his boot. I appreciated the smallness of that gesture more than any big speech about law. It was care. Deborah's voice, when it returned, had gone steelier. "If this is outside the HOA," she said, "then the HOA has the right to expand its zone under the development plan. We can vote. We can annex. We can assume care of this open space for the safety of the community." She said assume care like a threat. Cortez met her eyes. "This is not open space. It is private property recorded in 1978, and the developer who built Timber Ridge explicitly excluded it from the association because the wellhead for the old sawmill sits somewhere under those 2 pines. You try to annex, you'll find yourself staring at a recorded covenant that's older than your bylaws and far meaner in court." She made that smile again, but it slipped. She pivoted to us, to the kids, to my wife who had moved a step closer, not to loom but to love. You're putting everyone at risk, Deborah spit, and I will not apologize for taking action. My daughter spoke before I could. We have water. We checked the wind. Mom has a first aid kit. And this is our night, she said, voice tiny but steady. Deborah huffed. Children shouldn't be in the woods after dusk. My son wiped his marshmallow beard with dignified outrage. Then you should leave, he answered, and I almost laughed because bravery sometimes comes in the exact size of the kid who needs it. Here's where the twist arrived. Not like a plot device, but like life crashing in with its inconvenient facts. Tires on gravel, a second county cruiser, and a woman stepping out whose uniform fit like a memory. She looked at Maya and grinned. Well, if it isn't my favorite paramedic who made me swear off gas station coffee. Maya lit up at the sight of her old friend, Deputy Sergeant Aisha Ford. They'd met years ago on a midnight wreck when Aisha held C-spine while Maya started a line. Both of them standing in rain they were too tired to feel. Aisha hugged my wife quickly, then turned to the clearing with a professional's posture sliding into place. I got a 911 call reporting a wildfire, she said. The caller claimed children were being burned for TikTok views. She didn't look at Deborah, but the accusation hung in the night like a bat deciding where to land. Would you like to file a false report today or tomorrow? Aisha asked the air. Deborah's chin lifted. I will not be intimidated by your little small-town friendships, she snapped. We are a community of standards, and I uphold them. I'm sure you do, Aisha said politely, and part of those standards involves not lying to a dispatcher and not trespassing past surveyed boundaries while waving accelerant over a flame. She gestured subtly. Delgado stepped forward with the calm choreography of someone who has practiced de-escalation until it wears into their bones. Ma'am, I need you to step back across the chain. The followers stepped first, both suddenly eager to be far away from the cooling grate and the cooler silence. Deborah did not. She folded her arms across her chest as if her certainty could lift her over law. No, I'm not moving while these people endanger the valley with their illegal creativity. She said creativity like a disease. Aisha didn't sigh because professionals don't, but something in her face softened, like she wished every argument could be solved with a cup of tea and a hard talk. She pulled a laminated card from her pocket and read, voice gentle, the line about trespass on posted property when asked to leave. Then she did sigh, but it was the smallest, saddest sound. Madam President, you're under arrest for criminal trespass and filing a false police report. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. The newsletter fell from Deborah's hand and landed like a wounded bird between her shoes. I won't lie. There is nothing joyous about watching a neighbor get cuffed. There is only relief mixed with the ache of what it means to be human next to other humans who make your life harder because they're scared of losing control. But there was also something right, a level set, a recalibration, a reminder that rules cut both ways. As Aisha led her to the cruiser, Deborah's voice found one last thread to pull. We will sue, she tried again, and your little sign won't save you. Her eyes flicked to the stump where my hand-burned letters glowed in the firelight. Private land, legal campfire. I didn't answer. The trees answered for me, their needles hushing like prayer. You'd think that would be the end of it. It wasn't. People like Deborah do not fold quietly. The following week, she called an emergency HOA meeting under a pavilion lit by string lights and outrage. She tried to pass a resolution expanding the HOA boundary across every adjacent parcel the way a child expands a crayon drawing to cover a table. She waved printed maps with circles drawn in red, pretended those circles had the force of law. She accused us of endangering property values, of setting a bad example, of disrespecting the community. She brought a man in a suit who introduced himself as counsel, though later we would learn he was her cousin who'd passed the bar but not ethics. Neighbors who had once smiled at us at the mailbox frowned like they were being asked to pay for our sins. In the middle of the meeting, a quiet, stooped man walked to the front holding a cardboard document tube. I recognized him at once. Mr. Laird, the retired mill foreman who'd sold me these 2 acres after telling me stories about the saws and the trains and the way winter used to sound when iron met frozen pine. He slipped a thick packet from the tube and laid it gently on the table next to the lemonade, as if the paper might bruise. That's the original 1978 covenant, he said, Voice a creak over stones. That parcel is excluded from the association, so the old wellhead remains free of encumbrance. He slid another paper across. That's the county's letter reaffirming as much when the developer tried this nonsense in 1991. He tapped his finger once. Failed then. It will fail now. The pavilion went quiet but for the string lights humming like a nest of bees. Deborah flushed a color I couldn't name. The cousin lawyer fumbled with his phone like truth was a PDF he hadn't downloaded. In the back, a kid I recognized as one of the followers raised his phone. The video he played came from the night of the campfire, shot low and steady, catching Deborah's hand pulling lighter fluid from her tote and lifting it toward flame. We didn't know he had it. We didn't know he'd felt sick about the lie and sicker about the danger. His little brother's scout troop sitting in the pavilion that night, all of them learning about campfire safety while their supposed leader nearly turned our ring into a cautionary tale. The kid's voice shook. I can't be quiet anymore, he said. She told us to say there was a wildfire. There wasn't. We just didn't want to get yelled at by her again. The vote to expand the boundary died before anyone could pretend to count. The board asked for Deborah's resignation in voices so cautious you'd think resignation was a fragile animal that might spook. She refused. They removed her. The cousin lawyer stopped looking at his phone long enough to look ashamed. In the days that followed, a strange justice unfolded. The county prosecutor filed a misdemeanor false report charge. The sheriff's office added criminal trespass. The wildfire marshal submitted an affidavit about the accelerant and about public safety. A judge issued a no-contact order preventing Deborah from stepping within 100 feet of our boundary chain. None of it tasted sweet. Justice isn't cotton candy. It's iron. But there was one moment that tasted like rescue. The HOA's new interim president, a woman named Karina, who had spent months quietly patching fences Deborah's rage, showed up with a coil of rope and 3 high schoolers and asked if they could help me sink a permanent post where the chain dips. We talked about property and neighborliness and how rules are supposed to act like seatbelts, not bayonets. The kids dug post holes and laughed at how the earth smelled like pennies. We reset the chain and hung a small plaque that said, simply, respect. Deborah's ending wasn't cinematic. That's the point. Real endings rarely are. She pled no contest to the false report, took a year of probation, paid a fine big enough to sting. The trespass charge resulted in mandatory community service, and the judge, someone with a sense of poetry none of us knew we needed, assigned her to the Fire Safe Council. For 6 Saturdays, she picked up cigarette butts from trailheads and hauled slash from the edge of roads. I saw her once, across a ditch, hair wrapped in a bandana, face set hard against the work. She didn't look at me. I didn't wave. But I wished her a better way to be important in the world than making other people small. Our campfires didn't become a crusade. We didn't throw victory parties at the ring or post triumphant reels. We kept it simple. When the index is green, we light a small fire. When it's yellow, we play cards by headlamp. When it goes orange, we fill the birdbath and hope the swallows notice. Sometimes neighbors come by with mugs, and we talk about weather and fence posts and deer and the odd loneliness of modern life. Sometimes Deputy Delgado stops on his patrol to drink half a cup and answer the kids' questions about the radio. Once, Aisha brought her new puppy to meet my daughter's steady hand. Rafael Cortez stands with us once in a while, one boot on the ring, telling stories about the old mill and the day smoke stacked so straight you could set a ruler on it. On the stump, my hand-burned sign has begun to crack where weather meets wood, but the words still hold. Private land, legal campfire. Every time I run a fingertip over the letters, I think about the kind of home I want for my children. Not just a place where a fire glows and peaches caramelize and marshmallows go soft. A place where law is a shield, not a cudgel. A place where neighbors disagree without drawing blood. A place where my daughter's small voice can say this is our night and be answered with respect. The night after the hearing, Emma asked me if Madam President was bad. I thought about questions that try to make adults into simple shapes. Some people are frightened of losing control, I said. When they're frightened, they hurt other people to feel safe. She considered that, then asked if our sign would always protect us. I told her signs don't protect people. People protect people. She reached down, scooped a pinch of ash, and smudged it on my nose like we were painting each other into the story. Eli tried to draw a mustache on Maya. She let him. The fire sighed down into red, and the stars above our timber road were the kind of cold brightness that makes even old men feel like luck is possible. We raked the embers flat. We poured until the hiss said enough. We stirred and poured again, because peace isn't something you announce. It's something you maintain. If you're wondering whether I should have backed down to keep the peace, I hear you. I hear the voice in a lot of us that says it's not worth it. Just say yes, roll over. Let the loudest person write the rules. But there is a line between kindness and surrender, and you only find it by standing still and speaking quietly and refusing to pretend you don't see where your land ends and your neighbor's begins. That night, under the pines, with law on our side and safety at our feet, we set our stake. We didn't cheer. We didn't gloat. We just told the truth until it held. So that's the whole of it. An overbearing HOA president crashed our family campfire on land that isn't hers, called the cops, threatened lawsuits, and nearly turned safety into spectacle. Friends and facts showed up. Law did its job. The outcome wasn't sweet, but it was right. Would you have handled it differently? Was I right or wrong to stand my ground and press charges? What do you think?